Why was she walking alone across the tarmac? That's what the soldiers whispered as the helicopter blade slowed behind her. A lone figure in a crisp uniform, stepping into a war zone that smelled like dust, diesel, and the ghosts of too many missions. Lieutenant Commander Maya Reeves adjusted her cap against the glare of the Persian Gulf sun. The heat shimmered around her boots, and each step echoed against the steel skeletons of aircraft and hangars. Around her, men shouted coordinates, trucks growled past, and distant artillery thumped like a slow heartbeat. This was Forward Operating Base Sentinel, a place that swallowed names and returned only numbers. And yet, Maya walked through it like someone carrying more than orders. She carried answers. Answers that no one in that base even knew they needed. A small duffel was slung over her shoulder, unassuming, ordinary. But the locked black briefcase, handcuffed to her wrist, drew eyes wherever she went. Inside it, a single document that could change the fate of the mission, and, if handled wrong, the lives of thousands. She had been here before. Not officially, her name never appeared in those reports, but the dirt under her boots remembered her. Somewhere out beyond the perimeter, she had once pulled 2 soldiers out of a burning transport before disappearing back into the shadows of naval intelligence. Now she was back, not as a ghost, but as a storm walking into still air. When Maya entered the command center, the air conditioning hit her like a wall. The hum of monitors filled the room. Maps, satellite feeds, and coded transmissions painted the walls in light. A dozen officers stood over a digital table, studying topography and red lines of enemy positions. At the head of the table stood Lieutenant Jake Harmon, tall, square-jawed, the kind of man born to command, and to underestimate anyone who didn't fit his picture of a soldier. He was mid-brief when he saw her, and the look he gave was not curiosity, it was irritation. "Can we help you, ma'am?" His tone was polite enough to sting. "Administrative offices are in the next building." The room went silent. That single word, ma'am, carried weight. Not respect, not even sarcasm, just dismissal. Maya's steps were quiet as she set her briefcase on the table. Lieutenant Commander Maya Reeves, Naval Intelligence. Her voice was steady, low, deliberate. "I'm here for Operation Shadowfall." The silence thickened. Harmon exchanged glances with his team, amusement flickering behind his professional mask. "No offense, Commander," he said, leaning against the table, "but this is a classified SEAL operation. We don't bring in outside consultants, especially not at the planning stage." Maya didn't move, didn't blink. "I'm not a consultant," she said. The youngest SEAL in the room laughed under his breath. "What are you then? Public affairs, here to write the after-action report." Even Harmon smirked. "Let me guess, Annapolis grad, few years pushing papers at the Pentagon. They send you here for field exposure, right?" Laughter followed, not cruel, just routine, the kind of casual arrogance built into too many uniforms. But Maya had faced worse than mockery. The silence she'd learned to master was sharper than any insult. She reached down, unlocked the briefcase, and removed a sealed folder stamped with red borders and heavy clearance seals. Without a word, she slid it across the table to Colonel Richards, the base commander. "You seem concerned about my qualifications, Lieutenant," she said softly. "Perhaps this will clarify them." The colonel opened the folder. The laughter died. His eyes stopped at the top line, the clearance level, and the color drained from his face. "These orders are," he hesitated, "classified red." The room froze. Every man there knew what that meant. Red-level classification didn't just mean top secret. It meant no record, no trace, no deniability. Operations that didn't exist, not even to the people who fought them. "Signed by General Janet Wolfenberger," the colonel added, almost in disbelief. The smirk fell from Harmon's face like a mask coming loose. Maya didn't gloat, she didn't need to. Instead, she spread out new satellite photos across the table, blurred images of a mountain fortress deep in hostile territory. "This," she said, pointing to the image, "is where our problem lives. Intelligence confirms a terrorist cell has acquired components for a bioweapon, estimated operational in 48 hours." Her voice never rose, but the weight behind each word pressed against the room like gravity. She looked up. "Gentlemen, we don't have time for introductions. I suggest we focus on the mission rather than my resume." For the first time, no one interrupted her. She explained the assault plan: 3 approach teams, simultaneous infiltration, extraction at Delta Point. Every step, every risk, every fallback. Her hands moved like clockwork precision over the map, marking paths and timing. The same men who'd laughed minutes earlier now leaned in, taking notes. When she finished, she looked around the table. "Any questions?" Silence. And then, almost grudgingly, Harmon spoke. "None, Commander." But behind that quiet, the tension didn't fade. It shifted from mockery to respect, from ego to uncertainty. Because they all realized what Harmon hadn't yet admitted aloud. They had just been outranked, not by authority but by competence. Hours later, the sun bled red across the horizon as the war room emptied. Outside, engines roared, weapons clanked, and orders echoed through the compound. The mission was moving, and Maya Reeves had just become its center. Harmon lingered, watching her check the satellite relay. "You've done this before," he said finally. "Once or twice," she replied. He hesitated. "You didn't mention that in your record." She glanced at him, her expression unreadable. "That's because those missions don't exist." And with that she walked out, leaving Harmon staring after her, uncertain whether he respected her, feared her, or both. Night came fast in the desert. From the observation ridge overlooking the valley, Maya watched the enemy compound through night vision lenses. The fortress looked almost peaceful, lights twinkling against the black mountains, guards moving like shadows in a dance of repetition. But peace was an illusion. Inside those walls, something dangerous was stirring. She adjusted her comms. 3 entry points, she whispered. Alpha takes the south tunnel. Bravo secures the comm hub. Charlie team with me moves for the central lab. The objective is the bioweapon. Containment priority. Harmon's voice came through the earpiece. "With all due respect, Commander, this isn't your place. You should coordinate from mobile command." Maya's reply was calm, immediate. "The weapon requires specialized handling. I'm trained for that. Unless you've completed CBRN protocols at Quantico, Lieutenant, I'm the only one qualified." Silence followed, then Harmon's reluctant "copy that." She smiled faintly, not out of pride but out of memory of all the times she'd had to earn trust in rooms where she wasn't supposed to exist. The last thing she said before they moved out was simple, almost quiet. "Comm checks every 15 minutes. If anyone misses 2, we abort." They began the infiltration under a new moon. Alpha Team created a diversion at the south wall, the distant rumble of explosions echoing across the valley. Bravo slipped through a maintenance shaft. Charlie, her team, followed a narrow ravine that intelligence said was unguarded. It wasn't courage that drove her steps. It was duty sharpened by guilt and memory. Because Maya Reeves didn't come to Sentinel just to stop a weapon. She came to finish something she'd started years ago, a mission that went wrong, and a man she couldn't save. But that she hadn't told them. Not yet. They were halfway to the target when the first explosion tore through the night, too loud, too close. Maya froze. That was Alpha's charge. She pressed her comms. "Alpha report." "Static." "Bravo status." More static than gunfire. Finally Harmon's voice. "We're blown. They knew we were coming. Bravo's pinned in the east corridor. Alpha's silent." Her pulse spiked but her voice didn't change. "Fall back to extraction." Negative, Harmon shot back. We've found the lab, the weapons here, but we can't reach it without reinforcements. Maya checked her wrist display, their positions flickering on the tactical overlay. Bravo was trapped. Her team was the closest to them, but between them, a dozen armed hostiles. Change of plans, she decided. Charlie secures the weapon. Bravo create diversion east, draw them off. That's suicide for your team, Harmon argued. We have surprise, she said. Use it. She turned to her men. This is volunteer only. Not one hesitated. They moved in silence, slipping between shadow and flame. 2 guards fell before they could raise an alarm. The central lab door was reinforced, biometric access only. Maya's hands moved fast, bypassing the lock with specialized tools. Then came gunfire in the distance, Bravo's diversion. The door clicked open. Inside, a single containment unit stood beneath flickering lights. Biohazard symbols glowed faintly across its glass. The hum inside it didn't sound mechanical, it sounded alive. She stepped closer, and that's when the shot rang out. Specialist Rodriguez fell. Blood spread across his chest. Maya spun, firing twice. The guard dropped. The silence that followed was heavier than the gunfire. She dropped beside Rodriguez, pressing a hand to his wound, but his eyes had already gone still. "Commander," Sergeant Willis whispered, covering the door, "we've got company." She stood, her jaw tightening. "Secure the weapon, I'll cover." Gunfire rattled the hallway. The mission was unraveling. And somewhere between the smoke and the chaos, Maya realized the truth. They weren't just compromised. They'd been expected. How did everything go wrong so fast? That was the question echoing in her head as dust and smoke poured through the shattered lab door. Maya Reeves ducked behind a workstation, the sharp scent of gunpowder cutting through the sterile air. She counted the seconds between bursts of enemy fire, 2, maybe 3, the rhythm of men trying to advance. "Willis, cover left," she called, voice steady despite the chaos. Rounds tore through the reinforced glass behind her. Sparks danced across metal tables. Somewhere beyond the corridor, Harmon's voice cracked through the comms, heavy with static. "Commander, they've sealed the east wing. Bravo's taking casualties. What's your status?" "Containment secure," she replied. "But we're boxed in, we'll improvise." She looked down at Rodriguez. His blood had already cooled. She forced herself not to linger. Grief could come later if later ever arrived. Willis slid the containment unit into a portable shock case and locked the seal. The quiet click of the latch sounded almost holy in the chaos. That box, small enough to fit in a soldier's pack, now held something capable of erasing cities. "Charlie team moving," she said into her mic. "We'll link with Bravo." "Copy," Harmon's reply came, rough and labored. "We'll draw them off." She nodded to Willis, and they slipped into the maintenance passage, a narrow artery of concrete and shadow. The emergency lights flickered, painting the tunnel in red pulses that felt like the heartbeat of the dying base. They moved fast but careful. Every sound, every breath felt like it could give them away. The walls dripped condensation, the floor slick with old oil. Behind them, gunfire echoed through the compound like a storm. "Commander," Willis whispered, "you think the intel leak was internal?" Maya didn't answer right away. She thought about the satellite imagery, the intercepted chatter, the timing of their discovery. "They were ready for us," she said finally. "Someone fed them our window. Someone here. Maybe higher." The words tasted like ash. They reached a junction where the tunnel split in 2. The map on her wrist display flickered again, interference. Something was jamming their systems. Willis looked to her, left or right. She hesitated, watching faint heat signatures blink across her visor. Both paths showed movement. Both were traps. "Right," she said, "fewer bodies." He trusted her instantly. They turned the corner and walked straight into the next ambush. A grenade clattered across the floor, rolling to a stop near Willis's boot. He didn't think. He kicked it back the way it came and dove against the wall. The explosion tore through the corridor, shaking the ceiling, filling the air with dust and pain. Maya's ears rang. Her helmet HUD went black. "Willis," she shouted. He coughed, voice faint, "Still here." They pushed forward through the haze. 2 fighters emerged from the smoke, weapons raised. Maya fired first, 2 controlled bursts, both targets dropped. Her breathing was ragged now, every inhale laced with dust and adrenaline. They reached the access stairs leading to level 2. Above them, chaos raged, shouts, the pounding of boots, the mechanical roar of something heavy being moved. Harmon's voice crackled through the static again. "Commander, we're cornered in the east corridor. Can't reach your position." "Hold your ground," she said. "We're coming." Willis looked at her, doubtful but loyal. "That's suicide." "I know," she chambered another round, "but so is staying here." When they reached the upper level, the air was different, heavier, hotter. Flames licked from ruptured vents. The smell of burning insulation made her eyes sting. She heard Harmon before she saw him, his rifle barking controlled bursts from behind an overturned table. 3 of his men were down. 2 still fought. "Maya, over here." She slid behind cover beside him. "Status?" "Bad," he said flatly. "Alpha's gone, Bravo's half you." She glanced at Willis, then at the black case strapped to her back. "Still breathing." Harmon gave a short, humorless laugh. "Then we're doing better than most." They exchanged no more words. They didn't need to. Combat stripped away everything but the truth, and the truth was survival. Maya peeked around the corner, counting hostiles. 12, maybe more. Too many for a direct push. "Grenades won't cut it," Harmon muttered. "Then we make them chase ghosts," she said. He frowned, meaning. "Meaning we blow the lab." He turned toward her, realization dawning. "That's half the compound." "I know, but it'll draw every fighter in the valley straight to the fire." She opened her pack, revealing a compact set of C-charges. Harmon stared at them, then at her. "You were planning this." "Always have a backup," she said quietly, "especially when the plan comes from someone else's desk." She set the timer 5 minutes, long enough to run, not long enough to hesitate. The detonation ripped the night apart. From the ridge miles away, sentries saw the fire bloom and thought it was dawn. Inside the collapsing tunnels, Maya and her team ran through smoke and darkness, guided only by the faint glow of her wrist compass. The floor buckled, pipes burst. One man stumbled, Harmon caught him. 2 minutes, Maya shouted over the roar. They burst through a side hatch and into open air, the maintenance tunnel mouth that overlooked the northern valley. Cold wind hit her face like salvation. Below them, the world burned. She keyed her comms, coughing from smoke. "Shadowfall actual to command, package secure. Requesting immediate extraction at alternate point November. We have wounded." Static, then a voice she didn't recognize. "Negative, Shadowfall. Area too hot for helicopter approach. You'll need to reach secondary extraction 2 clicks east." She stared toward the horizon. 2 kilometers of open terrain, full of enemy patrols. And among her team, 3 wounded, 1 barely conscious. Harmon swore softly. "We'll never make it carrying Jackson." Maya checked the map overlay, her pulse steady despite the exhaustion pressing down on every muscle. "There's another way," she said. He gave her a look. "You've got to be kidding." The ridge ahead drops into a ravine, fast river at the bottom. If we reach it, the current takes us half a click from extraction. "That's a 30-foot drop," Harmon said, "and we don't know what's in that water." She met his eyes. "We know what's behind us." That shut him up. They started the climb. The wind howled, carrying the smell of smoke and blood. The wounded moved slow. Maya took the rear, pushing them forward, steady voice cutting through the fatigue. Halfway up, gunfire cracked from above, muzzle flashes like lightning against the dawn. "They're here," someone shouted. "Go," Harmon yelled, returning fire. "Move." Maya dropped to a knee, laying suppressive bursts. The recoil bit into her shoulder. Her mind narrowed to rhythm: shoot, breathe, move. A bullet struck rock near her head, spraying shards across her cheek. She ignored the sting, focusing on the final climb. At the ridge top, the sun was rising. Gold light spilled across broken mountains, painting death in beauty's disguise. Maya reached the edge and looked down. The river below was a twisting vein of white foam and shadow. She turned to the team. "I go first, package stays dry." Before Harmon could argue, she slung the containment case across her chest and stepped over the ledge. The slope dropped fast, loose rock, screaming wind. She slid, tumbled, caught herself, kept moving. The world blurred into motion and instinct. When she hit the water, it was like being punched by ice. The current tore at her, trying to rip the pack away. She held it tight. Above, gunfire continued. One by one, shapes dove into the water: Willis, then Harmon, then the wounded. The river swallowed them all. Minutes or hours, time lost meaning. The current carried them through a canyon of stone and mist. The only sound was the rush of water and the rasp of their own breathing. Finally, they reached a calmer stretch, clinging to the float bags like survivors of a shipwreck. Maya looked around. 5 men left. Jackson barely conscious but alive. The others ghost pale, silent. "Half a click east," she whispered. "We walk from here." They crawled onto the rocky bank. The cold wind cut through soaked uniforms, turning exhaustion into pain. She reestablished comms. "Shadowfall actual to Blackbird, package secure. 7 personnel, 3 wounded, ready for extraction." This time the reply came fast. "Copy that, Shadowfall, bird inbound." She closed her eyes, just for a moment, letting the sound of approaching rotors wash over her like mercy. Harmon limped to her side, face streaked with dried blood and ash. "I owe you an apology," he said quietly. "I misjudged you, almost cost us everything." Maya checked the seals on the case, her hands shaking slightly from cold and adrenaline. "We all make assumptions, Lieutenant," she said softly. "The difference is whether we learn from them." He nodded, eyes lowered. The helicopter appeared above the ridge, kicking up dust and debris. The sight of it, salvation made metal, nearly broke her composure. One by one they boarded. Jackson was lifted first, then the others. Maya stayed behind, scanning the horizon, the fortress still burning in the distance, the smoke rising like a signal to no one. Harmon turned back from the ramp. "Commander," he called over the rotor noise, "those missions you mentioned with Collins and Cuddy, they were like this, weren't they? Operations that never happened." She fastened the containment case to her harness. "Some battles," she said, her voice nearly lost to the wind, "are fought in the dark. Some victories are never celebrated, and some names are meant to stay forgotten." She stepped aboard. The helicopter lifted, rising into the smoke-colored sky. Below them, the mountain fortress collapsed inward, swallowed by the fire they had lit. Maya watched it fade, expression unreadable. Another secret victory, another ghost added to her collection. And in the hum of the engine, she thought, not of medals or missions, but of Rodriguez, of the faces she couldn't save. Because sometimes survival doesn't feel like triumph. It just feels like silence. How do you debrief a mission that doesn't exist? That was the question waiting for Maya Reeves when the helicopter touched down at forward, operating base Sentinel. The desert air was colder now, heavy with dawn mist and the smell of fuel. Engines idled, medics rushed forward, and the surviving SEALs were escorted away in silence. There were no cheers, no salutes, only the quiet footsteps of men who had seen too much and spoken too little. Maya remained seated for a moment, staring at the blood drying on her sleeve. It wasn't hers. That somehow made it worse. "Commander Reeves," a voice called. Colonel Richard stood near the landing zone, his expression unreadable behind mirrored sunglasses. The rising sun cut a line across his face, half in light, half in shadow, like a man who lived in both worlds. She unbuckled the containment case and handed it off to a waiting CBRN officer in full hazmat gear. The man saluted, cradling it like a newborn, before disappearing toward a secure transport vehicle. Only then did Maya step down from the helicopter. "Mission complete," she said. The colonel nodded slowly. "At what cost?" She didn't answer. He gestured toward the operations building, debrief room 3. Inside, the air conditioning hummed, and the walls felt too white, too clean for what she carried inside. Harmon sat across from her, a bandage on his face, leg braced, hands restless. He looked like someone trying to figure out which version of the truth to tell. Colonel Richard stood near the wall, arms folded. Two intelligence officers, unfamiliar faces, recorded everything. "Operation Shadowfall," Richards began, "is officially terminated. The objective was secured. Containment transferred to Strategic Command for analysis. Casualties: 6 confirmed, 3 wounded." He paused. "Now, Commander Reeves, for the record, what happened inside the compound?" Maya stared at the recording light blinking on the table. It was the only color in the sterile room. "They knew we were coming," she said finally. "Our entry points were compromised before we breached. Alpha Team was eliminated within minutes. Bravo and Charlie teams made contact in the central lab." "Enemy count?" one of the intel officers asked. 30 confirmed, possibly more." "Any indication of an external leak?" She hesitated. That pause small, but enough to make every man in the room notice. "Possible," she said. "Their response was too fast, too precise. Someone fed them our timetable." Richards exhaled through his nose. "That's a serious allegation, Commander." "It's not an allegation," she replied quietly. "It's an observation." Harmon shifted in his seat. "We didn't pick up any transmissions before insertion. Comms were clean." "Not clean enough," Maya said. "They jammed our channels within minutes of breach. That doesn't happen unless they know what frequencies we're using." The colonel exchanged a look with the intel officers, a silent conversation Maya had seen 100 times before. The kind that meant she'd said too much. After the debrief, she found herself standing outside the infirmary, watching through the glass as medics worked on Jackson, the SEAL who'd nearly died in her arms. His skin was pale, his breathing shallow, but he was alive. She wanted to step inside, to say something. But what could she say that wouldn't sound like an apology? Willis approached quietly, leaning on crutches. "He'll make it," he said. She nodded. "Good." Willis studied her for a moment, then smiled faintly. "You know, Commander, they'll write this one up as a success." "Success?" He shrugged. "Package secured, minimal losses considering." "Minimal," she repeated, the word bitter in her mouth. "Tell that to Rodriguez's family." Willis didn't answer. He just nodded once, slow and heavy, before limping away. Hours passed. The desert heat returned, baking the base into silence. Maya sat alone in her quarters, uniform stripped down to undershirt and fatigue pants, staring at the dust-coated window. She'd been through a dozen missions like this, none of them acknowledged, none of them remembered. But this one felt different. Because something about it didn't add up. The containment unit, the bioweapon, had been too clean, too controlled. The lab's power systems were modern, Western. The data terminals were encrypted with NATO-style architecture. Whoever built that fortress hadn't been working against them. They'd been working for someone, maybe someone in the same chain of command that had sent her there. A knock broke her thoughts. "Enter," she said. Harmon stepped in. No uniform cap, no rank on display, just a man carrying questions. "Colonel's sending the report to D.C.," he said. Shadowfall gets buried like the rest. She nodded, unsurprised. It always does. He lingered. You really think there was an inside leak? She turned to him. You do. He sighed. I think someone wanted us to retrieve that package, not destroy it. Her eyes narrowed. What makes you say that? He hesitated. Because the tech I saw in that lab, it wasn't improvised. That was military-grade containment. Someone with funding built it. Silence. Outside, a Blackhawk thundered overhead, shaking the walls. Maya leaned back, arms folded. You're not wrong. So what now? She gave a tired smile. Now I wait for the part where they tell me I'm done. And if they do, then I find out who they were really working for. That night she dreamed of the river, of hands reaching for her in the current, of Rodriguez whispering something she couldn't quite hear. She woke to darkness, sweat cooling on her skin, heart hammering. The clock read 02:17. Something wasn't right. Her instincts, the same ones that had kept her alive too many times, were screaming. She reached for her sidearm, stood, and moved toward the door. Then she heard it. A faint sound, metal scraping against metal. Outside her quarters, a shadow shifted. Someone was there. The door burst open. Two figures in black tactical gear. No insignia, no words, just violence. Maya moved first. A strike to the wrist, disarm. A pivot, elbow to the throat. The first man dropped, gasping. The second fired, silencer whispering death, the round grazing her shoulder. She dove behind the cot, returning fire once, twice. Silence followed. When she looked again, the corridor was empty. Both men gone, no bodies, no blood. She checked her shoulder, bleeding but shallow. Adrenaline drowned the pain. She turned toward her locker, opened it and froze. Her briefcase, the one that had contained her mission credentials, was gone. In its place lay a single object, a small data drive, red casing, unmarked. She picked it up, her pulse pounding. Plugging it into her wrist device, the screen lit up with a single encrypted file. The header read, Project Revenant Authorization, red. Shadowfall was only Phase 1. She stared at it for a long time, the words cutting through her exhaustion like a blade. She whispered to herself, what the hell did we just deliver? Morning came with an unease that spread through the base like a silent virus. Officially, the mission was over, but every face, every officer, every pilot looked tense, waiting for orders that never came. Maya dressed, bandaged her shoulder, and stepped out just as Harmon intercepted her near the comms tower. You look like hell, he said. Feel worse? He handed her a folded note. Colonel wants you in command at 900, says it's urgent. She took it, eyes scanning the short message. Report immediately. New briefing. Bring all mission data. Her gut tightened. He knows my case was stolen. Maybe he wants to help. She shook her head. No, if he wanted to help, he'd have sent MPs last night. When she entered the war room again, it was empty. No aides, no chatter, no projection screens. Just Colonel Richards standing by the same table where everything had started. Commander, he said, not looking up. Sir. He turned, and for the first time, she noticed the faint tremor in his hand. We received word from command. The containment unit you recovered, it's not in strategic's possession anymore. What do you mean? It was rerouted mid-flight. Authorization came from a secure DC channel. No one here signed off on it. Her voice went cold. You're telling me the most dangerous weapon on this continent just vanished? He nodded slowly. And you're the only one with red clearance who knows where it came from. So what happens now? Richards exhaled. Now, Commander Reeves, you disappear for a while. Higher-ups want a statement, then silence. No leaks, no questions. Her jaw tightened. And if I refuse? He looked at her. A long, heavy look that said everything words couldn't. Then you won't have to worry about a next mission. Maya walked out without a word. The sun outside was blinding, burning through the morning haze. Soldiers saluted as she passed, but she didn't see them. Her mind was already elsewhere, retracing the chain of command, the faces in the war room, the folder she'd handed over. Someone inside that circle had known. And now, the weapon she'd risked everything to contain was gone. She reached the edge of the tarmac, the heat rising like a mirage. Somewhere beyond the horizon, helicopters thundered, but not for her. She looked down at her wrist device, at the encrypted file still glowing faintly. Phase 1, she murmured. Then what's Phase 2? The wind rose, carrying the sound of distant rotors. And as the dust swirled around her boots, Maya Reeves realized that Operation Shadowfall hadn't ended at all. It had only begun. What happens when the soldier becomes the secret? That question haunted Maya Reeves long after she left Forward Operating Base Sentinel behind. She didn't wait for permission. She didn't file an exit order. She simply walked away. The transport that was supposed to take her to HQ, she never boarded it. Instead, she disappeared into the endless sprawl of military logistics routes, a maze where a single uniform could vanish among thousands. Somewhere between Kuwait and Cyprus, Lieutenant Commander Maya Reeves ceased to exist. And that was exactly how she needed it. The safe house was nothing special, a decaying apartment above a mechanic's shop in Limassol. The walls were cracked, the plumbing older than her career, but it had something more valuable than comfort: anonymity. Maya set her duffel down and locked the door behind her. The sound of the bolt sliding into place was strangely satisfying, a line between her and everything she no longer trusted. She sat at the rusted metal desk, unpacking the items that had survived the mission: a field knife, 2 encrypted drives, a sidearm, and a wrist terminal loaded with a single file, Project Revenant. The file refused to open, even under full red clearance protocols. That meant one thing: someone had locked it against her. She connected the drive to a portable decryptor, a device she shouldn't have, stolen years ago from a disavowed Black Ops cache. As code began to unravel across the screen, she poured herself a cup of cold, instant coffee and waited. The bitter taste reminded her she was still alive. After 5 minutes, the screen flickered. Then a fragment of text appeared. Project Revenant, Phase 1 complete. Test subject viability, success. Carrier sample acquired, transfer confirmed. Phase 2, field integration pending. She froze. Test subject, she whispered. The cursor blinked at her like a heartbeat. There was no metadata, no sender, no digital signature, but the access route pinged from a familiar source: Langley. Maya leaned back, every instinct screaming. Shadowfall hadn't been a containment mission. It had been collection. She hadn't stopped a weapon, she delivered one. 3 days passed, she slept little, ate less. Every hour brought new questions, and none with answers she could live with. Her shoulder wound itched beneath the dressing. She ignored it, focusing on the task at hand, tracking the missing containment unit. The shipment log she'd intercepted listed its route as Strategic Command Right Arrow NATO Joint Research Division, but that trail ended abruptly somewhere over the Mediterranean. The transport aircraft had never reached its destination. No crash report, no distress signal, no radar trace. It had simply vanished. Someone had erased it. And somewhere out there, the weapon she'd fought to protect, the thing Rodriguez had died for, was in unknown hands. By the 4th night, she'd started talking to herself, not out of madness but out of memory. "Rodriguez," she murmured quietly, staring at the glowing screen. "We did everything right, didn't we? Followed orders, secured the package, got our people out." Her voice cracked. "And still somehow we lost." The rain outside started suddenly, tapping against the cracked glass window. In the half-light of the room, she looked like a ghost of her own reflection, pale, tired, haunted. That's when the knock came. Soft, precise. Not random. Her hand went to the sidearm instantly. "Who is it?" A voice replied, calm, male, low, friendly, from the unit. She didn't believe it for a second. "Step back from the door," she said. Silence, then a single sheet of paper slid under the frame. On it in block text, 3 words. "They found you." Maya cursed under her breath, grabbed her gear and moved. By the time she reached the fire escape, the first shots hit the apartment. Glass shattered, plaster exploded into dust. She dropped 2 stories down into the alley, landing hard on one knee, pain lancing up her leg. But she kept moving. The night smelled like wet oil and cordite. 2 black SUVs turned the corner, same model, same matte finish, unmarked plates. Private operators, not local, not government. She sprinted across the street, vaulted a low wall, and ducked into a warehouse filled with shipping containers. Her breathing slowed. Her training took over. No noise, no silhouette, no hesitation. A beam of flashlight light swept the aisles. Footsteps followed, 2, then 3, then more. They were hunting her. And they were good. Maya crouched behind a crate, drawing her knife instead of her gun. Gunfire was loud. Knives were quiet. The first man passed close enough for her to smell the rain on his gear. She waited until his light swung away, then moved fast, silent, precise. 1 strike to the throat, 1 to the kidney. He went down without a sound. The second turned at the faint noise, too late. She caught his wrist mid-swing, twisted, slammed him into the steel crate. His weapon clattered to the ground. Her hand covered his mouth as his breath rattled out. By the time the others realized they lost contact, Maya was gone, slipping out the side door, soaked in rain and blood, adrenaline surging like fire in her veins. An hour later, she stood in the empty train yard outside the city, wind cutting across the steel tracks. She took out the data drive again, turned it over in her hand. If they were hunting her, it meant they knew what she had. And if they knew what she had, it meant someone somewhere was desperate to keep her from opening the rest of that file. She slid the drive into her wrist terminal again. The screen lit, 1 new prompt flashing. Remote access request detected. Accept/reject. Her pulse spiked. Rejecting it might trigger a trace. Accepting it might kill her system. She hesitated, then tapped accept. The screen flickered, then filled with static. A voice came through, distorted but unmistakably human. "Commander Reeves." She froze. It was a woman's voice, calm, authoritative. "Who is this?" Maya demanded. "You don't need my name," the voice said. "You already know who's behind this. You saw the signature." Maya's jaw tightened. "Langley." "Not exactly, beyond Langley." "What do you want?" "Correction," the voice said. "What you want, the truth. You've earned that much." The static deepened. "Project Revenant isn't a weapon, Commander. It's a contingency, a last resort measure for biological control. You were sent to retrieve a live strain, not to destroy it. The carrier is en route to testing." "Testing?" Maya said, her voice rising. "On who?" A pause. Then softly, "They didn't tell you." The silence that followed felt infinite. "Your unit, Commander. Shadowfall wasn't just extraction, it was exposure." Her stomach dropped. "No. You all inhaled trace levels during containment. The sample's latency period is 72 hours. If you're hearing this, the test is already in motion." The connection cut. Her screen went black. Maya's hands trembled. Her breath came shallow. She tore off her gloves and stared at her skin, half expecting to see something, anything. There was nothing. Just the quiet dread crawling beneath it. She thought of Harmon, of Willis, of Jackson, all recovering at Sentinel, all breathing the same air she had. She whispered, God. For the first time in years, the steel walls she'd built around her emotions cracked. If what that voice said was true, they weren't soldiers anymore. They were subjects. And the mission that had killed her friends had been designed to. The next morning, Maya was gone again. Her face, once plastered on restricted personnel lists, now flagged under missing, possible defector. But she wasn't running anymore. She was hunting. Every trace, every digital fingerprint of Project Revenant led to one name buried deep in the system. The signature at the bottom of the Shadowfall authorization order. General Janet Wolfenberger. The same woman who had signed Maya's red clearance. The same one who had sent her to die. By nightfall, Maya was on a freighter headed north. Rain lashed the deck, waves hammering the hull. She stood at the bow, gripping the railing, wind tearing through her hair. Somewhere in the distance, lightning flashed, and for a moment the sea lit up like the sky was on fire. She thought about the river again, about how she'd held on to the weapon, thinking she'd saved the world. Now she wasn't so sure. She whispered into the storm, as if to someone who might still be listening. Rodriguez, if you can hear me, I'm not done yet. The rain swallowed her voice, carrying it into the black horizon. And behind her, the storm grew darker, as if the world itself was bracing for what she was about to uncover. How far would you go to uncover the truth, if the truth might kill you? That question followed Maya across the Atlantic, whispered in the rhythm of the ship's engines and the restless hiss of rain against steel. By the time the freighter reached Hamburg's industrial port, she hadn't slept in 2 days. Her shoulder wound had reopened, her skin pale beneath the gray dawn, but she felt alive in the way only hunted people do. Germany was colder, quieter, a place where shadows had history. Her contact met her near the docks, Ingrid Keller, former Bundeswehr intelligence officer, now freelance analyst for anyone who could pay her in secrets instead of money. Short hair, leather coat, eyes like she'd seen the end of the world and didn't flinch. You look like hell, Ingrid said by way of greeting. Maya smiled faintly. I've had better deployments. They sat in a small cafe near the Elbe. Locals moved past them, businessmen, students, nobody paying attention. Perfect cover. Ingrid slid a small folder across the table. You said Project Revenant, I looked. Most of the files are ghosted like they never existed, but one tag survived, Facility 47. Where? Black Forest, deep. It's not German-run anymore, joint operations with your Department of Defense. Maya's fingers tightened around the folder. They moved the weapon there. Ingrid shrugged. Weapon, project, whatever it is. Satellite sweeps show heavy power output and biocontainment protocols. It's alive. The words hit harder than a bullet. Alive? Ingrid nodded. If you're going there, bring a mask and your ghosts. By nightfall, Maya was driving south through winding forest roads, the kind that swallowed headlights whole. The air smelled of pine and rain. Every few kilometers, a checkpoint, but she knew how to disappear. Forged credentials, altered transponder, confidence that never hesitated. The closer she got, the thicker the fog became, until the world outside the windshield was nothing but white and silence. Finally, through the mist, she saw it. A complex of steel and concrete half buried in the earth, disguised as an energy research facility. Facility 47. She parked the vehicle in an abandoned service tunnel and approached on foot. Security cameras tracked the entrance, their red lights blinking like patient eyes. Maya moved with purpose, inserting a bypass chip into the keypad. The door unlocked with a hiss. Inside, the air was cold, too cold, and sterile like the absence of life itself. She slipped down a corridor lined with glass observation rooms. The floors gleamed. The silence was suffocating. Then she saw it. Behind one of the reinforced windows, a containment chamber, identical to the one she'd seen in the mountain fortress. But this time, the glass was cracked. Her heartbeat quickened. On the floor of the chamber lay a shape human. No suit, no mask, no movement. She moved closer. The chamber label read, Subject 1, Shadowfall Control. Her reflection looked back at her through the glass, and beside it, the body's face came into view. It was Rodriguez. For a moment, the world stopped. No, she whispered. He'd been dead, she'd held him. But the man behind the glass, the same jawline, same scar above his brow, was breathing, faintly. A small light on the chamber monitor pulsed with his heartbeat. Maya's throat tightened. What did they do to you? A door clicked behind her. Maya Reeves, a calm voice said. She turned, gun raised. The woman who stepped from the shadows was older, hair silver beneath the harsh light, uniform crisp, eyes sharp. General Janet Wolfenberger. Of course. You always did ask the wrong questions, Wolfenberger said, and you always refused the right answers. Maya kept her weapon steady. You used us. Shadowfall wasn't containment, it was collection, experimentation. Wolfenberger's expression didn't change. You misunderstand. Project Revenant is not a weapon, it's insurance. Insurance against what? Extinction. Maya hesitated, the words too absurd to process. Wolfenberger walked closer, her boots echoing. We live on borrowed time, Commander. Bioweapons, pandemics, wars, humanity is one mistake away from erasing itself. Revenant is a countermeasure. The virus adapts, rewrites DNA to resist pathogens, radiation, even neural decay. It doesn't kill, it evolves. Maya's voice was cold. You tested it on soldiers. We tested it on heroes, ones who volunteered for missions no one else could survive. Rodriguez didn't volunteer. Wolfenberger's gaze flicked to the glass chamber. He's not dead, Maya. None of them are, not exactly. The serum triggers cellular reanimation after critical trauma, self-repair. Maya stepped closer, eyes narrowing. You turned him into a weapon that can't die. Wolfenberger sighed. You call it a weapon, I call it salvation. A sudden alarm pierced the silence, a deep, pulsing wail that made the floor tremble. Red lights strobed along the corridor. What is that? Maya demanded. Wolfenberger's composure faltered for the first time. Containment breach. Maya spun toward the chamber window. The glass, the one already cracked, fractured further, lines spiderwebbing outward. Rodriguez, or whatever he'd become, was moving. His eyes opened. But they weren't his eyes anymore. They glowed faintly, an unnatural shade between amber and gold. His skin shimmered with a pattern like veins made of light. Maya stepped back, horror freezing her breath. Shut it down, she shouted. Too late, Wolfenberger said. He's waking. The glass burst outward. The pressure waved through Maya to the floor. She rolled, firing instinctively, bullets sparking off metal and ricocheting harmlessly. Rodriguez stood in the breach, slow, unsteady, but alive. His wounds were gone. The hole in his chest, the blood all healed. Maya, he said, voice distorted, deeper, layered. She stared, disbelief and grief colliding. Rodriguez, can you hear me? He blinked, confused, then screamed. Not a human scream, something else, something that vibrated through the walls and rattled the air. Wolfenberger shouted over the alarm. He's not stable, his mind can't process the regeneration. You need to leave. Maya ignored her. She reached for him, voice soft now. It's me, you're safe. He hesitated, then lunged. She barely dove aside as his hand struck the wall, leaving a dent in solid steel. Security, Wolfenberger yelled. Seal level 3. Doors slammed shut across the hallway. Klaxons wailed. Maya scrambled behind a console, heart racing. She watched as containment gas flooded the corridor, thick, green mist swirling around Rodriguez. He didn't fall, he absorbed it. The mist sank into his skin, feeding the glow beneath it. "Oh my God!" Wolfenberger whispered, horrified. "It's adapting faster than expected." Maya rose, gun leveled again. "You said it doesn't kill." "I said it evolves. I never said we controlled it." Rodriguez's gaze fixed on Maya again, the gold light in his eyes softening for a heartbeat, recognition. Then he spoke, barely audible, "Run." The explosion that followed shattered the hallway, throwing them both backward. The fire suppression system kicked in, drenching everything in freezing water. When Maya regained consciousness, alarms still blared and Wolfenberger was gone. Only the smear of blood led toward an emergency hatch. Rodriguez was nowhere to be seen. She staggered to her feet, dripping, half-deaf, the world tilting around her. The facility lights flickered, one corridor at a time, as if something was moving through them, cutting the power as it passed. Maya limped toward the exit. Each step echoed like a countdown. Overhead, a loudspeaker crackled. "Containment breach level 3, lockdown imminent." She reached the surface elevator, slammed the override and felt it rumble upward. Her hands shook uncontrollably. When the doors opened to the cold forest air, she didn't stop running until she reached the tree line. Behind her, Facility 47 went dark, every light extinguished at once. Then, from deep underground, a single flare of gold light burst through the cracks in the concrete before fading. Whatever Project Revenant was, it wasn't asleep anymore. Hours later, she reached a mountain overlook. The dawn light painted the valley below in silver mist. Her hands were still trembling when she activated her comms beacon. "To anyone receiving, Facility 47 compromised. Project Revenant active. Do not engage. Repeat, do not engage." Static answered her. She switched frequencies. Nothing. She was alone again. As she sat on the wet ground, exhaustion finally caught up. The first rays of sun broke through the clouds, cutting across her bruised face. She thought of Rodriguez's last word, "run," and the look in his eyes. Somewhere inside that creature, he'd still been human. Maybe still was. Maya wiped the blood from her temple and whispered to the wind, "I'm not running." Because sometimes, duty isn't about obeying orders. It's about disobeying the wrong ones. She looked down at the forest, at the silent facility that now hid something the world wasn't ready for. And she made a promise only the dead could hear. "I'll finish this, Rodriguez, whatever it takes." The wind rose, scattering leaves around her like fragments of ash. Behind her, far off in the distance, a faint golden glow shimmered again beneath the earth like a heartbeat. Alive, waiting. Where do you go when the world you served starts hunting you? That question burned in Maya's mind as she crossed the Austrian border in an unmarked truck, its cargo hold filled with crates of machine parts and lies. Her hands were still shaking, not from fear but from something else. The tremor had started that morning, faint but rhythmic, deep under the skin like a pulse that didn't belong to her. She ignored it, she had to. The truck driver never asked questions. He was ex-military, she could tell from the way he scanned mirrors without moving his head, the way he never said ma'am. He dropped her near an abandoned airfield, nodded once, and drove off without looking back. Silence, just the wind, and the weight of everything she'd seen. Facility 47 was gone, sealed, maybe buried, maybe not. But the image of Rodriguez's eyes still haunted her. That golden light, the voice that wasn't his, telling her to run. She wished she had. Because the deeper she looked into Project Revenant, the clearer it became. This wasn't a single weapon. It was an idea. And ideas don't die in containment. By nightfall, she was inside an old NATO relay station overlooking the valley. The place smelled of rust and neglect. Dust coated everything except the comms table, which she cleared with the kind of precision only years of habit could carve into someone. She powered up the satellite array, patched into encrypted frequencies, and sent a single coded burst. Facility 47 compromised. Bioadaptive entity active. Request confirmation. Revenant contingency protocols engaged. Then she waited. For hours, nothing. Just the soft static of a dying network and the whisper of her own thoughts. Then a reply. Short cold. Commander Reeves, you are unauthorized for this channel. Stand down. Return to base for debrief. Her chest tightened. Base. They still thought she'd come back like a good soldier, hand over everything, erase herself. She shut down the transmitter, sat there in the dark, breathing slow. Then, through the static, a second message blinked across the monitor. No origin, no trace. He's not the only one. She stared at the words until they blurred. Then whispered, how many? No answer. She didn't sleep, couldn't. Instead, she opened the encrypted folder she'd copied from Facility 47 before it exploded. Each file was fragments of personnel logs, medical reports and test footage, soldiers lying on tables, their bodies convulsing, their wounds closing, some waking in terror, others not waking at all. At the end of the list was a timestamp, 02:17 hours, the same minute she'd woken from her nightmare back in Cyprus. Coincidence? Maybe once, not anymore. She pulled up the vitals overlay. Each subject's biosignature carried the same anomalous pattern, the golden bioluminescent pulse. And at the bottom of the screen, one final signature blinked red. Her own. For a moment, she couldn't move. Then she laughed short, hollow, broken. Of course. Shadowfall hadn't been exposure by accident. It was design. She was one of them. The tremor in her hand grew worse by morning. It came in waves, followed by a strange warmth in her veins, not fever, but energy, as if her body was learning to heal before it was hurt. She looked down at the scar on her shoulder, the old bullet grazed from the ambush. It was gone, smooth skin, no mark. She whispered, "What did you do to me?" Then she realized the better question, what am I becoming? The radio cracked to life just before dawn. Commander Reeves, this is Lieutenant Harmon. If you're alive, respond. Her breath caught, she grabbed the mic. Harmon, where the hell are you? Still breathing, he said. His voice sounded thinner, raw. They pulled us from Sentinel after your disappearance. Said you went rogue. Said you killed 2 men in Limassol. She winced. They weren't men, Jake, they were cleaners. Yeah, I figured, he said. Listen, I intercepted chatter from the strategic net. Revenant protocols have been activated across multiple theaters, Europe, Pacific, even stateside labs. Whatever they made, they're scaling it. Maya closed her eyes. It's spreading. Worse, he said, they're deploying it. What? Revenant wasn't meant to be defensive. It's synthetic immunity through controlled infection. The perfect soldier, no pain, no decay, self-healing. They want field results, and we're the prototypes. The line went dead. Maya stared at the silent radio, the echo of his words circling her mind like vultures. The perfect soldier. The perfect lie. That night a storm rolled over the mountains. Thunder shook the rafters, rain hammering the metal roof. She packed quickly, new disguise, false credentials, weapon cleaned. She knew where she had to go next, Zurich. If Langley was the brain, Zurich was the wallet. Revenant's funding routed through shell corporations under the Oberon Initiative, a black-budget biomedical front masquerading as pharmaceutical research. She learned one thing in intelligence work: follow the money, and it always leads back to the monster. Zurich was glass and order, the illusion of peace built on quiet deals. Maya moved through it like a ghost, short hair, civilian clothes, forged ID under the name Anna Roth. She checked into a hotel that smelled of marble and forgetfulness, then watched the building across the street, Oberon Technologies. At midnight, she entered through the delivery bay, slipping past sensors with practiced precision. Her reflection moved in black glass, one woman against a machine that fed on nations. Inside, the corridors hummed with quiet life, clean light, air too perfect to be real. She found what she was looking for in the sub-basement, a restricted archive labeled Genetic Systems Division. Using stolen credentials, she accessed the internal log. The files displayed a timeline of experiments dating back years before Shadowfall. Subjects listed by code numbers, origins Afghanistan, Iraq, Somalia, all combat retrieval zones. She scrolled further. Subject 3, Rodriguez. Subject 7, Willis. Subject 9, Reeves, M. Her stomach clenched. They'd tagged her long before she ever stepped into Sentinel. God, she whispered, it was never about the mission. The screen flickered. Then another window opened automatically, a video feed. A lab white light monitors, and in the center Harmon. He sat restrained in a chair, IV lines snaking into his arms, eyes open but unfocused. Electrodes mapped glowing threads under his skin, the same gold light she'd seen in Rodriguez. Subject 11, a scientist's voice said off-screen. Adaptive sequence stable, neural override commencing. Harmon's head jerked, muscles seizing. He screamed not in pain but in defiance. Then he looked straight into the camera and spoke her name. Maya. The feed cut to black. Her hands shook as she backed away from the console. They had him. Alive or something close to it. For a long moment she just stood there, the hum of the facility pressing against her chest. Then she whispered to the empty room, I'm getting you out. An alarm triggered silent, just a shift in the lighting, the subtle blink of cameras redirecting. She tripped a security trace. Within minutes, footsteps, voices. Maya ran. Through the sterile corridors, past labs and sealed chambers glowing faintly gold. She didn't look too closely, didn't want to see the shapes moving inside. She reached the loading bay just as floodlights flared to life. Freeze. 5 guards, military posture, real rifles. She dove behind a transport crate, bullets sparking across the floor. Returned fire in short bursts, methodical, controlled. 2 men fell. The others flanked. Her pulse slowed, battle calm. That old rhythm she thought she'd forgotten. She moved like muscle memory made flesh. Knife step silence. When the last guard dropped, she exhaled hard, chest heaving. Then the tremor again. Worse this time. Her vision blurred, colors bleeding into gold. Her skin burned. She fell to her knees, choking. The glow pulsed under her veins, faint, rhythmic, alive. No, she gasped, not now. For a moment she thought she'd lose consciousness. Then, as suddenly as it came, it faded. She looked down. The wound from the fall had already closed. Her voice broke in a whisper. They didn't just infect us, they changed us. Outside, rain began to fall sharp, cold, relentless. Maya stumbled into the alley, blending into the storm. The city lights blurred through tears she refused to admit were there. She had one goal now, find Harmon, destroy Revenant, end it before the infection spread beyond control. But even as she moved through the rain, part of her knew the truth. It might already be too late. Because somewhere beneath the streets of Zurich, inside Oberon's sealed labs, golden light was spreading, flickering through containment tubes, crawling along wires like veins of fire. And over the distant thunder, a single thought echoed in Maya's mind, slow, deliberate, almost tender. You can't stop evolution. Hours later, she found refuge in a train station maintenance corridor, alone, soaked, exhausted. She looked at her reflection in the metal wall, pale face, hollow eyes, faint gold shimmer beneath her skin. She whispered, "You wanted the perfect soldier, congratulations." Then softer, "But I'm not yours." She closed her eyes and breathed, slow, deliberate, human. And for a fleeting moment, she could almost pretend the glow was just the reflection of the city lights. Almost. How do you save someone from the same thing that's killing you? That was the question pulsing in Maya's skull as she crouched in the cold rain outside Zurich, watching the floodlit Oberon compound through a sniper's scope. Hours of reconnaissance had revealed a rhythm, guards changing every 40 minutes, patrol drones on 12-second sweeps, main elevator locked by biometric scan. Impossible odds. She'd faced worse. Beneath the dull ache of exhaustion, something else thrummed in her blood, a strange alertness, a sharpened sense of movement and heat, like the world had widened around her. She could feel the guards before she saw them. The virus. Whatever it was rewriting her. "Focus," she whispered. The rain eased, turning to mist. She slung her pack over one shoulder and moved. She slipped through a maintenance culvert and emerged in a sub-level corridor slick with condensation. The hum of machinery vibrated under her boots. A digital panel glowed red. She bypassed it, fingers steady, pulse calm. Her reflection in the steel door startled her. The faint gold shimmer under her skin was stronger now, like veins of light beneath glass. She ignored it. Mission first. She followed the map she'd memorized, 2 floors down, East Wing. Containment B, Subject 11. Harmon. Every step echoed with ghosts, Rodriguez's scream, Wolfenberger's calm, the promise she'd made to finish this. 2 guards blocked the junction ahead. Corporate armor, heavy rifles, bored expressions. Maya waited in the dark, counting their breaths. Then she moved. 1 breath closed the distance. 2nd, knife to the throat. 3rd spin disarmed silence. It was over before either hit the floor. She dragged them into a storage alcove, wiped her blade on her sleeve. Her heartbeat didn't spike. That scared her more than the blood. Because it wasn't adrenaline keeping her steady anymore. It was something else. She reached the containment wing. The door required retinal access. One of the guards she'd taken out provided that. The scanner blinked green. Inside, the air was colder, recycled, sterile. Rows of glass pods lined the walls, each filled with faint amber mist. Figures floated inside, suspended between life and death. Subjects 4 through 10. All soldiers, all glowing faintly gold. Maya moved past them, whispering a name under her breath with each number. Willis Carter Singh. Her voice cracked. They'd all been hers, Shadowfall. Then she saw him. Harmon. Pod 11. He was restrained upright, breathing slow, eyes half open. Tubes fed into his arms and chest, gold light pulsing beneath his skin like liquid fire. She touched the glass. "Jake, it's me." His eyes fluttered open. For a second, recognition, real human. "Maya," his voice was faint, muffled through the chamber. "You shouldn't." The alarm cut him off. Red light strobed. A recorded voice echoed. "Containment breach in Section B, security response initiated." She cursed under her breath. The retinal scan too long. It had triggered an anomaly check. Harmon strained against the restraints. "They're coming, go." "Not without you." She ripped open the control panel, fingers flying across wires. She studied this system back at Facility 47, same manufacturer, same arrogance. "Come on, come on." The seal released with a hiss. The pod opened. Harmon fell forward into her arms, weak but breathing. His eyes burned gold, brighter than hers. "You're changing," he rasped. "So are you." "Then we're out of time." They moved through the corridors, Maya half carrying him. Behind them, boots thundered, orders shouted in German and English. Harmon grimaced. They'll use suppression gas. I know. You can't fight all of them. I don't plan to. They reached a side maintenance hatch. She keyed the override. The door slid open into a freight tunnel leading toward the river outlet. Freedom almost. But the first wave of security appeared at the far end, armored, visors down, weapons raised. Maya shoved Harmon behind a crate. Stay low. Bullets sliced the air. Sparks erupted around them. She returned fire in controlled bursts, every shot precise, surgical. The smell of ozone filled the tunnel. Then a round caught her shoulder, same spot as before. She staggered, dropped to one knee. Pain flared, then vanished. The wound closed before her eyes. Harmon stared wide-eyed. Maya. She met his gaze, voice steady. I told you, we're not dying tonight. He handed her an extra mag. Then finish it. They fought as one, old rhythm, old trust, every movement born from months of missions and years of silence. But the enemy didn't stop coming. For every guard they dropped, two more replaced him. Maya's vision blurred, edges glowing gold. The world slowed, her senses expanding until she could see every trajectory, every heartbeat, every breath. She moved through them like wind through reeds, untouchable, unstoppable, terrifying. When the last guard fell, she stood in the flickering light, chest heaving. Harmon stared. What did they turn you into? She holstered the weapon, something they'll regret. They reached the tunnel exit, rain pounding outside. Harmon collapsed against the wall, coughing. I can feel it burning inside. I don't know how long I've got. Maya knelt beside him. You're stable for now. He shook his head. No, it's spreading faster. You need to finish this, Maya. Destroy everything connected to Revenant, even me. She gripped his shoulder. Don't you dare ask me that. I'm not asking. He pressed a small data key into her hand. Access codes, Oberon's master servers, wipe them remotely, promise me. She stared at the key. It felt heavier than any weapon she'd ever carried. Before she could answer, a new sound rose above the rain, a low mechanical hum. Helicopters. Searchlights tore through the fog, sweeping across the forest. They found us, Harmon said. Maya helped him up, then we move. They stumbled through the trees, mud sucking at their boots. The night smelled of fuel and thunder. Extraction, Harmon asked between breaths. No one's coming, she said. We're ghosts now. One chopper banked low, light slicing through branches. Gunfire shredded bark around them. They dove behind a fallen log. Harmon groaned, clutching his chest. Gold light flared under his shirt, pulsing erratically. Maya, go. Not happening. She fired upward, hitting the helicopter's sensor array. The machine veered, spinning away in a burst of sparks before crashing into the tree line with a roar. The explosion lit the forest in amber light, too close to the same glow in their veins. Harmon looked at her, half smiling through the pain. Still the best shot in the unit. Still the worst liar, she said. They made it to a ravine, a deep cut in the forest where the river carved through stone. This way, Maya said, leads south. Harmon stumbled, nearly falling. She caught him, but the contact made her realize something horrifying. His pulse was syncing with hers. Both golden, both accelerating. Maya, he said weakly, if one of us dies, what happens to the other? She didn't answer because she didn't know. By dawn, the rain had stopped. Mist rose from the river like smoke. They took shelter in an old hunting cabin near the ridge. Wood walls, rusted stove, forgotten photographs nailed to the beams. Maya secured the door, then turned to him. Rest, I'll watch the perimeter. He grabbed her wrist. You're shaking. She looked down. The gold shimmer ran along her veins, bright even in daylight. It's getting worse. He smiled faintly. Maybe it's not worse. Maybe it's the next step. She met his eyes, tired, defiant, still human. "We're not gods, Jake." "No," he said, "just the proof that they tried to make one." Silence stretched between them, filled only by the crackle of rain on the roof. Finally, she said, "If we can't stop it, we make sure no one else ever starts it again." He nodded slowly. "Then we burn the world's last chance to play God." That night, she uploaded the access key to her wrist terminal. The Oberon mainframe coordinates blinked on screen. She could wipe everything: data, samples, funding chains. One keystroke and the entire network would vanish. But she hesitated, because deleting the data wouldn't destroy the virus. It would just hide it. And hiding secrets was how all of this began. She closed her eyes, whispered to herself, "No more shadows." Then she sent a new transmission, one untraceable but public, routed through open networks, anonymous boards, dark web caches. Project Revenant EXISDS, code red, "Do not trust strategic command." The message scattered across the world like shrapnel. When she opened her eyes, Harmon was watching her. "What did you do?" "Made it impossible for them to bury us." He exhaled, half laughing, half terrified. "Then they'll come for you." They already did. As dawn broke, golden light filtered through the cabin window. Real sunlight this time, not the glow beneath her skin. She looked down at her hands. The shimmer had dimmed, for now. Harmon was asleep, breathing shallow but steady. She pulled a blanket over him, then stepped outside into the cold air. The valley stretched below, quiet and endless. Somewhere down there, soldiers would wake to rumors of a bioweapon, generals to a data breach, and the world to a truth it wasn't ready for. Maya Reeves stood alone, soaked in morning light, and for the first time in years she felt something close to peace, because at least the lie was broken. But peace never lasts. Far in the distance, across the river, a second flare of gold rose into the sky, larger than before, pulsing like a heartbeat. She whispered, "Rodriguez," because she knew that light. And she knew this wasn't over. Not yet. What do you fight for when winning means erasing yourself? That question waited for Maya Reeves at dawn, in the thin mountain air above the valley. The golden flare she'd seen before sunrise still burned on the horizon, steady, pulsing, alive. Not a signal, a heartbeat. The infection had found its own rhythm. She watched the glow shimmer through the fog, spreading like veins of light across the treetops. Even from this distance she could feel it, warmth against her skin, a vibration in her bones, calling to the same light inside her. Rodriguez. He was out there. Or whatever was left of him. Behind her, Harmon stirred. "You see it too?" "Yeah." "How far?" "Too close." He sat up slowly, pain etched across his face. The gold under his skin pulsed with every breath. "If he's still changing, we don't have long." She nodded, jaw tight. "Then we finish it today." They prepared in silence, old soldier habits. Weapons clean, charges checked, comms synced. Maya paused at the doorway, looking back at the cabin. Wooden walls, bullet scars, a single cup still half full of cold coffee. It looked almost peaceful. She whispered, "Thank you," to no one, then stepped into the mist. The trail down the ridge wound through shattered pines and slick earth. The closer they got, the thicker the air became, heavy with static and the faint metallic scent of ozone. It wasn't just radiation, it was transformation. "Smell that," Harmon said. She nodded. "The virus is airborne now." He grimaced. "Then it's not a weapon anymore." "No," she said, "it's a world waiting to happen." At the valley floor, the remnants of Facility 47 rose from the earth like broken ribs. Concrete slabs split open, rebar twisted skyward. Golden mist seeped through the cracks, glowing faintly against the daylight. And in the center stood Rodriguez. He wasn't human anymore. His body shimmered with light, skin translucent, veins burning like molten glass. The air around him distorted, bending with heat and energy. But when he turned, his expression was the same one she remembered, calm, loyal, almost gentle. "Maya," he said. His voice carried through the valley without sound equipment, every word vibrating in the chest more than the ear. She lowered her weapon but didn't holster it. "Rodriguez, can you hear me?" He nodded once. "I remember you." "Then you know why I'm here." He looked down at his glowing hands. They called it salvation, but it's hunger. It grows. It wants everything. "Can you stop it?" "I tried," he said softly, "but it's in all of us now." Behind her, Harmon coughed, light pulsing brighter through his veins. He was fading, becoming something else. Maya took a step forward. "Then help me end it." Rodriguez tilted his head, eyes sad. "Ending me won't end it." "I know." She raised the detonator. "That's why I brought this." Explosive charges, compact, high yield, buried around the fractured reactor beneath the ruins. Enough to vaporize the valley. Enough to erase every trace. Rodriguez smiled faintly. Always the strategist. Maya's voice trembled. "You told me to run." "I was wrong," he said. "You were never meant to run." Harmon stumbled forward, rifle trembling in his hands. "We don't have time for goodbyes, if this spreads." Rodriguez looked at him, the light in his eyes softening. "You feel it too, don't you?" Harmon nodded, sweat shining on his skin. "It's inside, crawling, can't tell where I end and it starts." Maya pressed the detonator into his palm. "If I can't trigger it, you do." He tried to hand it back. "No, you get out." She shook her head. "You're already gone." For a second neither spoke. Then Harmon laughed, a dry, broken sound. "Always hated taking orders from you." "Then make this one count." The ground trembled, the mist thickened. Rodriguez convulsed, light surging brighter, tendrils of energy spiraling upward into the sky. The virus was reacting, feeding off emotion, maybe memory. Maya's radio crackled suddenly, an open broadcast. "Unidentified transmissions detected over Sector 9. Evac protocol initiated. Airstrike inbound." Her heart lurched. "They're going to bomb it." Harmon looked up, expression grim. "They're going to sterilize the entire region." Rodriguez's voice broke through the static. "No bombs, you'll only scatter it." He wasn't wrong. A conventional strike would turn the virus into airborne ash. Maya whispered, "Then there's only one way." She met Harmon's eyes. He understood instantly. They moved fast, racing through the ruins, planting the final charges around the reactor core. The golden light intensified, shimmering in the rising mist like dawn through fog. Rodriguez followed them, slower, unsteady, his form flickering between human and something unearthly. "You can still leave," he said. "You have minutes." Maya stopped. "We both know I won't." He studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "Then I'll hold it back as long as I can." She reached out, touched his arm. The surface of his skin was warm, pulsing softly like heartbeat through glass. "Thank you," she said. "For what?" "For reminding me what loyalty looks like." By the time she and Harmon reached the ridge, the sky had changed, clouds swirling around a column of gold rising from the valley. The air shimmered, the world held its breath. Harmon sat against a rock, hand gripping the detonator. His pulse flickered under his skin like a dying star. "Maya." She knelt beside him. "If we'd met anywhere else," he said, voice faint, "maybe this ends differently." "Maybe." He smiled. "Do me one favor." "Name it." "Tell them we fought the right war." She wanted to promise, but she couldn't lie anymore, so she said the only truth left. "They'll never know." He nodded once. "Then I guess that's justice." The roar of jet engines built overhead, the inbound strike. Maya keyed her comms. "This is Commander Reeves, all aircraft abort run. Repeat abort. Area compromised with live bioagent. Stand down. No response. She switched to an open emergency band. You drop those bombs, you end the human race. Pull back now. Still nothing. She looked at Harmon. He managed a weak grin. They never did listen to you. She closed his fingers over the trigger. You detonate when I say. What about you? I'll make sure Rodriguez can't stop it. He hesitated, Maya. But she was already running. The valley glowed like molten metal. Rodriguez stood at the center, streams of gold light rising from the ground into him, energy feeding energy. He turned as she approached. It's too late. Not yet. You'll die. So will everyone if I don't. He looked almost proud. You really are the best of us. Maya raised her rifle. Then forgive me. She fired 3 shots straight into his chest. Each round exploded in light, not blood. He staggered, fell to one knee. His glow flickered, dimming. Maya, I'm sorry. He smiled, peaceful, almost relieved. Don't be. Then he exploded in a burst of gold that swallowed everything. On the ridge, Harmon shielded his eyes from the flash. His comm crackled. Maya. Only static. He whispered, I'm sorry too, and pressed the trigger. The valley erupted, light, fire, silence. A bloom of gold and white that outshone the sun, then collapsed inward, pulling itself out of existence. The shockwave rolled through the mountains, flattening trees, scattering mist. Then nothing. No fire, no sound, just the quiet after sacrifice. When the rescue teams arrived 3 days later, they found no trace of the facility, no bodies, no radiation. Just glass fused into the shape of a crater, and in its center, a single object. A dog tag, scorched but intact. Reeves, MLCDR. They logged it, sealed it, and filed the report under containment successful. No one asked what had been contained. Months later, in a small coastal town far from any map, a woman walked along the shoreline at dusk. Short hair, worn jacket, eyes like she'd seen too much. She picked up a flat piece of glass, gold-tinted, humming faintly in her palm. She turned it once in the light, then tossed it into the sea. For a moment her reflection shimmered gold in the water. Then it was gone. Voiceover tone. Some wars don't end with medals or marches. They end in silence, in choices no one ever reads about. I used to think victory meant surviving. Now I know, it means protecting what's human in you, even when you're not sure it's still there. She watched the sun sink beyond the waves, gold fatting to red. They'll never know what we gave up. But maybe that's the point. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts. The screen of her wrist device flickered once, faint gold pulse, then dark. The tide rolled in, erasing her footprints from the sand. And somewhere beneath the surface, in the deep quiet of the world she'd saved, the light pulsed once more. Not as warning, but as memory.